Hello, welcome back. Welcome to the Daily Chronicle. My name is Rodney, and we're going to talk about making decisions and how we make decisions.
And I'm Keith, and this is the More in Common Day, where we just chronicle our journey to connect with people and connect with our future daughters, leaving some breadcrumbs along the way as they build their path when they get there to learn, hey, about the daily efforts that we put into place to get wherever it is that we're going and build community because we love to learn from other people and we love to engage. So it's all about connection.
Yeah,
So
it
making
is.
decisions.
And there's a piece about compassion that I think we forget, but
Hmm.
we'll add that in sometime.
Yeah, we
It's
can
all
talk
good.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about that next. So making decisions. We make business decisions, we make career decisions, we make life decisions. But I think it's
Yeah.
interesting how we make business decisions because we think differently. We have very different opinions. We've come up with a couple of good ways of making decisions together. Number one that I would like to call out is the name storm, which is apparently a real
A
thing in the
real
world
thing.
of
We thought
consulting,
we
I
made it
guess.
up, but
We did. We were
turns
going to
out
patent it and sell it to you, but we
it
can't.
exists. Yeah.
Uh, but we use it for coming up with names for things like the name of our podcast, More in Common, or the name of our company, More in Common, or the previous name of our podcast, Under the Skin. We do a version of a brainstorm, and we basically. Well, Keith, do you want to talk them through how we do it?
Yeah, I think the idea of the decision making that we always talk about just at a macro level is incorporating logical reasoning with emotional input, right? Like what feels right, what doesn't feel right, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. And the name storm is for bigger
And
than
also,
things.
sorry, making sure everybody in the process is heard.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and everybody buys in. Like if one person vehemently does not buy in, it scratches the idea. Like, and it's not necessarily democratic. The goal is to try to get, and we have a small team, right? So there's three of us right now as we continue to build. So that might change over time. But the
Sure.
reality is, like, we want to incorporate logical reasoning, everybody's input, and emotional sentiment. So the name storm takes that into consideration. Where we write down. Let's take a name of our podcast. It took us months to come up with this second name. We write down everything that comes to our mind, as
Well, this is, and
silly
this
as it
is,
can be.
it should be noted, this is round one. So, and I think this is scalable
That's right.
for larger teams, but we break it down into rounds, and each round has a different purpose. But
That's
round
right.
one,
So it's round one. Is just throw a bunch of things out there and write them down as
there's no
silly
bad
as they
idea.
can be. That's right. There's no judgment on any idea. Like some of the names that we came up with in that early name storm are just silly, right? Like they have
Kangaroos on
nothing
a
to do
desk.
with could be absolutely, right? Like just
I don't know.
things like that. And then what we do is we'll come back to that list if something comes to mind, it's whatever. But then we come back to that list and we just start reading it off. And
Yeah.
this is where it comes into lacking democratic principle. It's like, do you buy it? Do you like it? Do you don't like it? If one
Hmm.
person doesn't like it, it's scratched from the list. And it's a very instinctive. I like it. I don't like it. I like it. I don't like it. We try not to overthink it because what we really want in a situation like that is what does feel right. And then we get to we do that a few times until we get down to a manageable list of maybe 10. There's no real number, but just something that is right in the ballpark. And then we start analyzing it. We'll like read it out in a sentence or in a marketing tagline or whatever the case may be.
Or
So
doing
now we'll
research to
add it.
understand the background
The
and definition, the origins of the words.
Absolutely. And so that's when we come to it. And then if we don't come to anything, we start it all over again. And that's why it took us a long time to come up with More in Common because we had to do a name change.
When
And it just
possible,
took us months.
we try not to put a deadline
Yeah.
on the end of this. It's not always possible, but we try and let the creative process work,
Right. So
and
that's one
it
way
does
we
things.
look to make decisions. And I think it
Yeah.
really is a good demonstration in our business of how we do immediately and analyze like what feels right, because there are a
Yeah.
lot of times because we think differently where something is suggested and Rodney's like, oh, that sounds good. My instinct is no, it doesn't sound good. So then we have
Yeah.
to go into
Well,
the
that's key.
analysis of it. Yeah, then we go into the analysis of it, and if it still doesn't feel good, then we'll table it and maybe come back to it later. But if it's like,
Also,
oh, I'm good with it, I agree with your logic, then we proceed and we give it a shot.
sometimes you or I don't agree with an idea, but we defer to the other person because it's more in their wheelhouse. So we've
That's right.
done a lot of work on understanding each other's strengths.
Yeah.
And instead of trying to recreate a will, and for me to understand why he thinks something is operationally sound doesn't make sense from a time perspective. And at especially at the point where we are, we can afford to make mistakes and just keep rolling. So, and we can always change it later. So sometimes it's just like, you know what? I'm gonna save myself the mental space and the executive function and say, yep, do it. I don't like it.
Hmm.
I don't, but it doesn't matter. Do it and we'll see what happens. So
Or
that's
on the
it.
other
That's a
side,
key one
it's
as
like,
well.
yeah, I really like that idea, but we're going to scratch it because of X, Y, and Z,
Well,
and
and
maybe we'll
that's
revisit
be
it
the third
over
one.
time.
That I mean, that's important because it's like just because an idea is great and we like it doesn't mean that we can execute on it right now.
That's
So
right.
we have to prioritize
Right.
it. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would say like for us from a business decision making standpoint, and from the community, would love to hear how, if you have a process to making some business decisions, whatever they may be, however important they are. So type those in. But for the girls, like, listen, I think what's important is, and we've talked about this before, don't discredit the emotional response that you have towards something. In fact, build it into your decision making process. But
Yeah.
then again, also build in the analytical component of it so you can combine those two in a collaborative way. So you can ultimately make whatever decision is necessary in the moment for the short term or long term or both. That's what
Yeah.
I
And
would say.
you just said collaborative, and I would take that, that you got the collaborative piece for understanding all the parts of you and then collaborating with whomever you're co-creating with or you're working with. And I think collaboration over I'm right is probably the thing I would say. So
Yeah, I like that.
yeah, let us know what you do for making decisions and have a great day.
Days of great.